I haven't run into it yet. I've played no matches against it online. So let's see. Here we are. Cliff Boyardee versus Blake Madson. Blake playing the role of the enemy, I guess, in this scenario with Rakdos Midrange. Opens things off with the land in the past, and we'll see. Okay, Ornithopter. And yeah, so walk us through this. Yeah.
This is the ideal start. You're basically looking for Koldoth. Well, I've called it Koldoth Rebirth, Gleeful Demolition, and Ornithopter in opening hand. Oh, we even have the Halo Hopper. So Gleeful Demolition is red mana, destroy any artifact. If you control it, make 3/1/1s. And then Halo Hopper is a 3/2 for 3, but it also has Convoke. So we see 6 power on turn 1 for Cliff here.
I mean, if you've played a lot of limited, I'm not even sure you'd recognize these cards. These aren't even playables. And yet here we are, turn 1. Yeah, Cliff affinity out here with Halo Hopper. And all right, let's see. Now the follow-up, we're looking for ideally one of a pair of 5-drop white creatures, right?
Well, Burning-Tree Bushwhacker, I guess, would be the most ideal, but
Sure,
it looks like we don't have that. But yeah, we're looking for any of the Convoke creatures, which is there's 8 of in the deck, Venerated Loxodon and Knight-Errant of Eos. Any of those would be able to, put a giant 4/4 into play and get a bunch of value. Looks like Cliff does not have that. Just going to go with Voldaren Epicure. But yeah, that's kind of the genesis of this, is just trying to make a bunch of tokens as quickly as possible to power out those Convoke creatures.
And no land here for Cliff. Oh, no, I'm sorry. There is one. Just came in late in the turn. So by virtue of that coming in at the end there, I think we can assume there's no 5-drop Convoke creature in hand. And now it's up to Blake here.
Yeah, it's also a little interesting that Cliff decided not to shock the Sacred Foundry, given that we do have that blood token available. If Cliff had maybe an extra land or 2 in hand, maybe wanted to filter one of those away. So my assumption is that Cliff's hand is probably something along the lines of 1-drop plus Bushwhacker and wants to just try and find a land here.
Okay, well, let's see if that's the case. I mean, Blake with a Fable, that's a great card and everything, but not.
I'm going to put you to the test, Joe. Do you know what this card is?
Not a chance.
It's called, we can get this on the screen. It's Plargg, Dean of Chaos. This is the back half. So this is a really interesting card. Now, I did mention that there's been people working on some of the flex spots, and I forgot who posted the first 5-0 with this, but basically the back half is 2 and a white for a 2/3. There it is. Other tapped creatures you control get +1/+0. Other untapped creatures get +0/+1. And then whenever you attack, you can basically untap anything and tap anything. So you can kind of, maneuver exactly what creatures you want to get which bonus. So basically, for all intents and purposes, a 3-mana anthem.
Yeah, okay, there we go. And my friend that played the deck, they asked me, are there any other lords in Pioneer? And I was like, well, or anthems. They asked for anthems. I was like, there's in the trenches, but I don't know that that's going to cut it. But there you go, Plargg. And yeah, Blake's going to take a look. And yeah, all right. So pumping up the attackers, and that's presenting 6 power on the board now. And okay, it's going to be dispatched. And is Blake holding on here at 10 life?
10 life versus 3/1/1s. We'll have to see what Cliff's leftovers are. Yeah, just going back to what you were saying earlier, Plargg is just more of the cards that weren't even that good and limited. So we're going to go ahead and start with the blood token activation here. Really looking for, again, the Burning-Tree Bushwhacker combination, or even something like Ornithopter Bushwhacker. Does not look like we have that.
Yeah, instead, Bone Crusher will take down a token, but you got to work with what you have. And Blake, at minimum, we'll have 2 sizable creatures this next turn. So maybe we can get this under control. Now, how much burn are we looking at here for Cliff to finish the game out? It's none, right?
Outside of dealing 1 damage with Voldaren Epicure, yeah, there's not really any Boros Charm, Lightning Strike, anything of that nature. What Cliff, I think Cliff's best draw at this point is probably the Knight-Errant of Eos, given that we're so low on gas. You could say, use 2 of the tokens to convoke out the Knight-Errant, and then to enter the battlefield trigger, maybe find 2 creatures, maybe looking for, like a Burning-Tree and something else, but it does not look like Cliff has that.
No, this was an exciting opening. But it has petered out here, and now Blake is probably feeling okay. And 8 life probably seems, not so bad.
Yeah, and we're even going to start, now this is almost past the point of no return here. We're going to start copying Blood Tithe, and we could use the copy Blood Tithe to pick off the tokens. You could even, get maybe a little bit more aggressive next turn and copy Bone Crusher Giant. And with no creatures in play, the Convoke cards are fine as 5-mana 4/4s, but specifically with the Knight-Errant, if you don't use anything to convoke with it, you can't hit any creatures off of the ability, because it allows you to take creatures that have mana value equal or less than the number of creatures that convoked it. So if you just tap 5 lands, then you can only find Ornithopters at that point.
Right. Okay. So here we have,
Oh,
is that an Embercleave?
it is an
Well,
Embercleave, but then we met with a power word kill. I forgot. Yeah, I had mentioned you mentioned Reach, and I forgot that Cliff was playing 2 Embercleaves. But yeah, that was an Embercleave, but that was met with a power word kill. So
okay. Well, that's game one for the Black Red on the way to potentially a top 8 berth here. We are in round 6 of 8. So generally, if you're familiar with larger Swiss or actually any size Swiss events, undefeated with 2 rounds to go usually means you're in. So let's go ahead and take a look at the deck list and see what Blake Madson has got working with as far as how outside of stock are we. And we can kind of scan through some singletons here. Looks like we've got a Duress and a Liliana. 2 Croaks has kind of become more common these days, hasn't it? I feel like I've seen that a lot lately.
yeah, it has. I don't know if that's a misplaced Ginger thing or if I think it might be, as well as the 3 Castle Walk Twains, which is this looks like more of a misplaced Ginger list than because I've seen some other lists that have had 4 Shieldred Mutavault, but we don't see those here. As far as sideboard cards for Blake here, again, a lot of spot removal, but we're going to be really looking for those sweepers. So 3 Extinction Event and a Ritualist Soot, those are slam dunks. Past that, not. I mean, I guess you could Noxious Scraps to kill the Convoke 4/4s, and maybe you could shave on some of your spot removal because that's not as good when you're pointing it at a third of a card in the with the exchange of Gleeful Demolition.
All right, and then let's go ahead and look at Cliff Boyardee's Boros Aggro deck here. Again, this is relatively new, I would say in development deck, but it comes out very fast, very hard. And then, so the lists that I personally had seen did not have Embercleaves in them, but that is there. Here's potentially a finisher, especially great on your Convoke creatures.
Right. Yeah. And then from Cliff's side of things, going to be looking towards, I believe, the wedding announcements and the invasion of Gobakons. Invasion really helps at dealing with or making the sweepers cost a little bit more, makes them cost 6 instead of 4. And then wedding announcement just really good at grinding. Going to be looking to, I would imagine, cut some of the one-ofs like the Legion Loyalist, maybe the Giant Killer, possibly the Plargg, maybe the Forbidden Friendship, maybe the Embercleaves. But we'll have to see what Cliff does.
Okay. So as the players are getting ready for game number 2. Thanks for being with us. Devin and I just showed up, but we're going to be here for the rest of the day. We are going to be playing the entire tournament today. That's not always how things go in the Rich Gaming, but today we are going to be running all the way through the finals. So you don't have to wake up early tomorrow to watch the semis and finals, but just give yourself an extra hour of sleep and then tune in for the Modern 5K, which will begin, I believe, at 10 a.m. Central. But okay, Devin, so this is a deck you've been working on, and you're talking about playing it at the Last Chance in Dallas. Is now you've played, for other people that may be thinking about making attempts at like that, you've played in the Last Chance in Atlanta. How would you say, did you show up? Are you planning on showing up with a deck and then you're going to play it, or do you think I'll play this deck, maybe have some alternate sideboard cards, maybe even an alternate deck to shift into as the day goes along?
Well, when I went to Atlanta, I brought most of my collection, so I think I ended up playing I think I played 4 Last Chance qualifiers, and I played 4 different decks. So, yeah, that might not have been the best idea because I'm just kind of I'm questioning my last minute ideas. But yeah, the structure also was not the best in Atlanta as far as I remember. The very last Chance, there was I think they closed registration at 6. And there was 8 people in line, and they're like, okay, we'll just fire an 8-person LCQ, even though they're supposed to be 32. So, but yeah, I'll probably bring a couple of different decks just in case things go poorly.
Okay, well, maybe we can talk more about that later as we are underway in game 2. Cliff Boyardee leads off with Legion's Landing. So that stayed in. I believe this is this a singleton? I don't have the deck list up in front of me at the moment.
Let's see. I want to say there were 2 copies.
Okay.
Scanning. Yeah, 2 copies.
All right.
And it's very important here for Cliff to start on a white creature specifically, because the Convoke creatures are both white. So if you can imagine, if you start with Voldaren Epicure into the Gleeful Demolition, those are all red creatures, so you can't Convoke. So you need to have a white creature available. And here we see a really aggressive start. So landing into Burning-Tree Bushwhacker to flip that landing on turn 2.
Yeah, this is pretty hot stuff here, as the Thraben Inspector will come down off the bonus mana from Legion's Landing. And Blake's sweepers cost 4. Is he going to get to turn 4? That's a question right now.
Yeah, it's an interesting use of excuse me, Reckless Bushwhacker there, because typically you want to, you would ideally want to save it until you have more creatures in play. But the backside of Legion's Landing, just being able to produce a token every single turn, even in the face of sweepers, very, very potent against Rakdos.
All right, so Blake hoping for a reprieve here, and Cliff just setting up what kind of assault to send here this turn. 4 mana.
It's a lot of mana.
And it's a token. This is a main phase token. So this would then probably be a convoke creature?
Most likely, yeah. So either Venerated Loxodon or the Knight-Errant. I think Cliff would probably prefer the Loxodon, does have the Knight. But this could find another copy of, say, Reckless Bushwhacker plus anything to turn it on next turn. And that is almost certainly going to be lethal next turn. So.
All right. So Knight-Errant of Eos.
There it is.
Looks fine. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So Blake can see what's coming. That doesn't mean there's an answer for it.
We're really going to need a copy of Thoughtseize to take that Bushwhacker out of the hand.
Yeah, and that's just for starters. That doesn't deal with the board, including the Knight, which is now, unlike all the other creatures which are on the smaller end, the Knight is a solid body. And this has been rather quick, but we might be heading off to a game 3 momentarily here.
And also notably, so Blake had 3 copies of Extinction Event. If you look at Cliff's board, it's fairly spread out in terms of the mana value. So you have the Knight, the Bushwhacker, and the Thraben, which are odd, and then the 2 tokens in the Burning-Tree, which are even. So if you cast Extinction Event, you're only getting half of the creatures here. Mm-hmm. So that is a very nice thing about splitting up the mana cost as well.
All right, so another Blood Tithe Harvester. All right, take down the biggest creature, fine. That will maybe get Blake another turn.
So at 13 life, Burning-Tree, Bushwhacker, 1 blocker. So you block one of the Burning Trees. You take 2, 4, 6, 8. I think I counted 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 attackers. 6 get through. No, I think it's 13 actually. I think it's Xyxes.
It's a lot.
Enough, most likely.
Here it comes. And as you're pointing out, all right, so Blake's like, what's the biggest one? I'll block it.
Yeah, it should be exactly 13. And it is. We are going to game 3. That
Well,
was a nice start.
There's a good chance we'll get to the backup match this round, I'm going to say.
That is a very good estimation. Yeah, you're probably correct on that.
All right, so Blake Madson here on the play this time. That makes these sweepers a little more viable. Yeah, tough to even decide. Really, what do you want? Do you want to turn to Blood Tithe Harvester? Do you want a removal spell? I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter, right? You just want to do anything you can the first few turns of the game, and then have a sweeper on turn 4, and that's the best shot you have.
Right, just interact as early and often as possible. Like I think Blake's best draw here probably involves, say, like maybe a Thoughtseize on turn 1, maybe a Blood Tithe on turn 2, and then double spell on turn 3. That's, I think, the most important part about this, because the cards that Cliff is presenting are all, they're all presenting more than one creature. So in order for Blake to keep up with that and give him enough time to get to that sweeper, he really has to try and double spell, Harvester, like turn 1 nothing, turn 2 Harvester, turn 3 Fable. That's not going to get the job done. You really got to have a lot of interaction early on.
All right. Well, the players are pile shuffling because that's a habit we just haven't rid of our community of completely yet. And Cliff here with, what will even, like, this convoke token? I mean, convoke and tokens makes sense. That goes together pretty naturally.
I'm pretty... Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm pretty interested in these Halo Hoppers. It's a card that I initially tried out in this list, and I was not, mostly unimpressed. I like that Cliff has gone down to 2 copies because whenever you see the second copy in your hand, it's not really ever a card you want to see the second. So 2 feels like a pretty nice number, and it obviously incredibly powerful with something like a turn 1 demolition, and that's really what that's the start that Cliff's looking for.
All right, opening hands have been drawn. Blake, this would probably be a time to mulligan aggressively, as any kind of slow developing hand, you're not going to get to cast those cards. The Cliff side, on the other hand, this is a deck that probably, probably does mulligan a fair amount because you're probably on a somewhat low land count and you have specific needs. You need kind of a token maker and a white convoke creature, obviously, is the ideal, right?
Yeah, some sort of payoff. I kind of count Bushwhacker as a payoff too. So if you have
Sure.
like any sort of way to generate a bunch of tokens, you figure you have, the Gleeful Demolitions and all the 1-drops, and then you have the 12 payoffs and the 8 Convoke creatures and 4 Bushwhackers. So, but yeah, I agree. You can't really keep a hand that doesn't have one of those payoffs because then you're just, you're just putting a bunch of 1/1s on the battlefield, but you need something to make them a little bit better.
Yeah. All right. So Blake did keep 7.
Big fan of Cliff's hat, by the way. Love the
That
love the hat.
Yeah, that is you don't see a sombrero as a style choice too often, but there you go. All right, here's a duress. Okay, not quite the potential this could miss, unlikely, but okay. Legion's Landing is the choice, leaving behind some tools.
Yeah, Cliff only, well, at least game 1. Well, post-board Cliff is going to have a lot more, but game 1 there's only 9 spells in the deck. But we kind of presume that we're going to bring in the 6, 3 announcement, 3 invasion, so a lot more hits post-board. So it does make sense to duress. And also, you don't really want to take 2 with the Thoughtseize. This is a matchup where your life total matters quite a bit.
Yeah, sure. So let's talk. I know my friend brought it up to me that Burning-Tree Emissary, occasionally in this deck, you can get stuck by not being able to use all the mana from it because it does make red and green, and sometimes. So, like, how realistic? How much of an issue is that?
It is definitely an issue. Where if you it's only mostly an issue where you don't have a white creature on turn 1, so like an Inspector or a Legion's Landing, because then if you have like the Burning-Tree into another red creature, you can't play the Convoke creature off of that. But I think it is powerful enough when combined with Bushwhacker that it is worth it's worth still playing, in my opinion.
All right, so here we have the sabotage on the clue. Another Inspector, and here's Knight-Errant. This was a good turn.
So turn 2, we've put 9 power into play and drawn 2 cards against Rakdos. That's not bad.
No, and that's a Loxodon found there from Knight-Errant, as it was a full power knight. And Blake's like, oh, you can get 5-drops on that? Well, Cliff's like, yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I found a Loxodon and Epicure. Really wants to find a Bushwhacker here, because if you can imagine Cliff's side of things, if we just tap out for the Loxodon next turn, kind of sort of playing face up into a sweeper, which Blake may or may not have on turn 4. So wants to try to get as much damage out of these creatures as possible next turn in the face of a sweeper. Now, again, talking about something like Extinction Event, if you say jam the Loxodon and power up the tokens, Extinction Event odd to kill the 2 4/4s and the 2 Inspectors, you still got 3 2/2s in the battlefield, so it's not that bad.
Yeah. Here's the Burning-Tree Emissary. Yeah, so either sweeper, the Ritual Soot was the other one. Neither would kill everything at this point. And Blake's still at 20 life, but that's going to be dropping rather significantly this turn.
There's an Epicure. We'll have to see if we have the Bushwhacker. I think Cliff only has no. Cliff has 2 cards. Okay, I'm not sure if it was 1 or 2, because we know 1 is the Loxodon. So yeah, I would imagine we're going to be tapping. Yeah, so the 2 creatures that just came into play, 2 Inspectors. I think it's better to pump up the Goblin tokens, because again, playing around Extinction Event specifically, if you pump the Inspectors, it makes Event on odd a little bit better, because that would kill the 2 pumped Inspectors and the 2 4/4s. Whereas if you put the counters on the tokens, Event is a little more awkward, because then you're spreading your power around a lot more.
All right, so there is Loxodon. There are a bunch of growing creatures. Attack for 6 incoming, and this Bank Buster is not looking real great right now. But Power Board will take out the biggest creature coming in. So, all right, 18 life followed by a sweeper. I mean, that's possible. It's not like Cliff has a lot of cards in hand.
Right now, the ritual Soot's a little bit better too, because we killed one of the 5-drops. So, but yeah, we're definitely on sweeper or bust here. I can't really imagine a scenario where Blake gets out of this without 1.
Yeah, I mean, is Shieldred possible? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, maybe? Well, okay, it's going to have to be.
Yeah, it's going to have to be. So on the board, you block the 4/4 and take 2 4 6 8 11 13 on the board, or no, 13 on the board, I think, assuming that my math was right. And if I'm Cliff, I'm shoving.
Yeah. I mean, that's what this deck is designed to do, right?
Yeah.
Like,
get him in the red zone.
Your thought process involved in how do we build this board? Now that you have it, all it does is one thing. It gets in there.
Yeah. Now, if Blake does happen to find the Ritual of Soot, the block on the 4/4 makes that Ritual of Soot a lot more devastating.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Blake should be going to 4, then up to 6.
Alternatively, I guess the Extinction Event on Even is now off the table. But Odd might be
Right.
the name anyway. Uh-oh. Oh, that's the Bank Buster getting taken out.
Okay. Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, Gleeful Demolition, not like Kuldotha Rebirth, it can actually destroy any artifact. And if you destroy your own artifact, you get the tokens. But if you destroy your opponent's artifact, no tokens. So once the cut Blake off of some extra draws there.
Slight upgrade to Shatter, I guess. I mean, not an instant, but it's cheaper. And okay, here, potential for 3 tokens, pretty nice. All right, yeah. Blake says that Loxodon's dead. That's kind of important.
Yeah, but, definitely an important one.
Yeah, okay, a pass there. I mean, is 2 spot removal spells even enough here? 1, 2, 3. I think it isn't. We've life total at 4. I believe Blake's at 6.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, assuming that Blake remembered the trigger. But let's if Blake's at 6, you go block Emissary, even say double removal spell, block Emissary, 2 removal spells. That's still lethal.
Yeah, all right. There's one.
3 removal spells, maybe.
I guess it's possible. There's a push. That's not enough.
That is 6 damage.
Yeah, and that is dead.
All right.
And well, that looked pretty solid. And I was informed, as I said, I haven't played against this deck yet, but I was informed that this deck is supposed to be favored against Black Red, and it looked good there.
Yes, very, very impressive win for Cliff. And like you said, I think this deck does have a decent Rakdos. It's actually funny because the one game that Cliff lost was game 1, where that's usually your best matchup where they don't have sweepers. So kind of funny that Cliff, stole, or not, I guess not stole, but won both the post-board games in fairly dominant fashion. Those none of those post-board games were really that close. And maybe if Blake found a sweeper, we would have had maybe a slightly different story. But yeah, congratulations to Cliff.
Yeah. And so something to consider, and something that I'm having to think about now ever since, yesterday, is that we've got 2 weeks until Dallas. And this could reasonably, if this deck is good, which it certainly seems like it has a lot of potential, I'm going to not be too hasty and say it's obviously great at this point. It's just too early. But if this is something that people have to adjust their sideboards for, then that could kind of upend the entire metagame. Like if decks start playing more sweepers, then not only does to deal with this, then maybe humans it's a little worse. I mean, like there could be a lot of churn in the next couple of weeks. This is interesting stuff heading into the regional championship in Dallas.
And yourself as the Lotus guy, maybe you got to start playing some fogs in the sideboard.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, that's a card I've played with in the past, and yeah, this is this is not something that looks appealing as a matchup. So not that necessarily Lotus has been crushing lately anyway, but yeah, this looks tough. And if this is another hard matchup, then you have to rethink how you build Lotus or whether you even play Lotus. So
and then just quickly from the Rakdos side of things, we saw those games, and we even talked about how Extinction Event and the 4-mana sweepers might not have been good enough. If you're looking to beat this deck, you really got to look at 3-mana sweepers. Hidetsugu Consumes All, Anger of the Gods, Deafening Clarion, stuff like that. So.
Yeah, and there's the new one too, the Gleeful Demolition, right? Which because most of the red creatures are 1 toughness for the most part, right? And then the whites are 2 or 4, but they're not gonna die anyway. So yeah, there's if you're planning on playing Pioneer in the near future, especially for stakes that matter to you, there's some things to reconsider here. As we've got Cliff moving into the booth, we'll get that going when it's ready. And I'm interested to hear what what are we, 6-0 now? Cliff,
6-0.
Impressive start. What I'm gonna let Devin do most of the questioning here because he has more experience with the deck, but what's your feeling after 6 rounds with this thing?
I think that the list is incredible. It's just like I was blown away in my testing. Just like we've been trophying leagues like crazy with it. It's amazing.
Well, that's awesome to hear. I was actually, well, you mentioned it, looking at your deck list, I see that you made some slightly different choices. The way that I kind of look at it, and it seems like you kind of agree here, there's kind of a core 32 that I think most people play with, and there's about 9 to 10 flex spots. So the flex spots here, the ones that I think are a little less uncommon, 2 Halo Hopper, a Plargg, and 2 Embercleave. Talk to me about those. What was the thought process behind those numbers?
Well, the Embercleave is a little interesting. We knew that no one would expect it, and it was just we tested it, and it was just like killing people out of nowhere, messing up the math. The yeah, the sorry, the Plargg's really nice as a one of. Like there's some one ofs that you want to try to get off the Knight-Errant, and whenever you need them, and yeah.
All right, so let me ask here: what's a one of, or what's a card that didn't make the cut that you like but wasn't quite good enough for today?
We didn't like the white 2-drops because you couldn't cast them off Burning-Tree.
Okay.
I didn't want to play too many Legion Loyalists. I wasn't super impressed with that card either, and we didn't want to play too many Forbidden Friendships. Because we were making room for more non-creatures like the Embercleave, so you don't want to dilute your deck too much from the with the Knight-Errant.
Yeah, and that's kind of been my experience too. I've tried some, like you said, some different 2-drops. I think it's the Resolute Reinforcement some people play. But yeah, I mean, this list looks really, really good. I was, very impressed. I like a lot of these numbers. Embercleave is something that I haven't had the opportunity to try yet, but I definitely, with your performance, I got to try it now. It looks looking pretty good. So yeah, and then the sideboard looks pretty stock. I know you decided to go with Wedding Announcement, which is a card that I have not been the biggest fan of against Rakdos. But talk to me, like, have you had the opportunity to cast that, and like, how does that feel against Rakdos?
It's been pretty nice. It's like it's pretty fine. I definitely want to bring it in because I'm taking out the Embercleaves. The Embercleaves aren't very good against their removal. It's sometimes you gotta grind them out. Like keep making your 1/1s, keep convoking and drawing more cards. Sometimes it comes down to like Allegiance Landing flipped and a Wedding Announcement that's taking over.
All right, we've got a question from the chat. How many hats are you wearing right now?
I'm wearing 2. I was wearing 4 this morning.
4?
Boy,
sometimes you need more hats. That's how you go 6-0 in these tournaments.
I've been living my
secret.
life wrong. Wow. Okay, that's how it works. All right, yeah, 6-0, potentially double drawing into top 8. All right.
Yep, hopefully.
Boyardee, excellent start. Now I want to give you a chance here. You said we a couple times as far as people you're working with this deck on. You want to shout anybody out that's helped out with this?
Well, it's a little private. I'm gonna keep it secret.
Okay.
Yeah, just one other person basically. We've been testing all week.
Okay, so it's the Royal We. Boyardee, getting it done here today. Congratulations, and we will probably see you in the elimination rounds.
Yep, thank you.
All right. So back to us, Devin. That was
awesome.
Yeah, that was. I like to see players that do well and then like actually know what they're talking about. Like Cliff knows the cards that were barely in, the ones that kind of came up short. Work's been put into this, and this deck looks like a force.
Yeah, very, very big fan. Like you said, have to see if if it ends up winning the whole tournament. Cliff's obviously doing an incredibly very good job here this weekend. Have to see if the metagame's going to change or adapt in any way. And very excited to see the evolution, because those last 10, we talked about this. The last 10 flex spots are kind of up in the air, and they're really open for interpretation. And there's a lot of different ways you can go with that. So, and I do like a lot of Cliff's choices.
All right, so we'll await word here as to whether we've got time for a backup match, or if we're heading to a break, or what's going on. But thanks for being here with us. Follow if you're new and want to have. Okay, well, let me cut that off, and we are in. We do have a backup match. We have Fletcher Johnson against Samantha Welch, Lotus Field versus Mono White Humans. All right, so from your neck of the woods over to mine a little bit.
I was gonna say that. Yeah, we get to see my pet deck on camera, and now we get to see your pet deck on camera. It's just a pet deck fest over here.
All right, so these two players at 4 and 1. Looks like Samantha is on a mulligan, and Fletcher begins off with here just a blue land. And all right, things are underway. Kithian to apply pressure. And so from the Lotus perspective here, really you're looking for mana development. Well, okay, so we are playing in Fletcher's seat with the main deck mana creatures. That's not something Samantha's gonna be too happy about here.
Now, from I don't have a ton of experience with Lotus Field. I do have kind of a broad estimation of some of the matchups, but I have to imagine this is not the matchup that you want to sit down across from.
No, it's not ideal. Although it is, it's much less painful in a closed deckless event like the Needleverge events, because Samantha cannot sit down and just know that mulling to Thalia is probably a good idea.
True.
And with Fletcher going first here, with Hope Tender, with Lotus, I mean, this is an excellent start. And also, he has the knowledge that if Samantha had Thalia, it would be on the board right now.
Right. We're getting the dice out on turn 3.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it is possible.
Yeah, you don't see this very often, but the Hope Tender definitely helps that, because with the hidden strings, if you untap the Hope Tender and the Lotus Field, that's effectively another copy of Lotus Field. So
yeah. So one trick that you can do with the Lotus coming down on turn 3 in this scenario is you can exert Hope Tender and untap the Lotus, and one of the lands that's about to be sacrificed and get an extra mana before it goes to the graveyard. You would only want to do that if you had something like an ultimatum coming down this turn. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't be worth the exertion. But this is still a good turn. Here's a strings.
So 2 floating, and then we're going to go generate up to 5. So it looks like potential 7 mana here right now. Or did I do my math wrong?
Yeah, it's 6. Hope Tender does cost, well, okay, let's maybe
7. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 floating plus the 3 the 3, and then the Hope Tender is effectively Hope Tender, for all intents and purposes, is basically a Lotus Field that only makes 2, right?
All right, here's a Leer, which, okay, there's a strings to untap. Okay.
Ciphering. Love to see.
Why not? Yeah, on the flashback,
Yeah,
there's no reason not to. And this is quite turn 3. Samantha's just waiting.
So 3 mana, and then the Hope Tender is 2 more. I think I saw a Vizier and a Pour in Fletcher's hand. We might be good to go here.
Yeah, this is pretty good. It's still going to be fairly tough to maneuver a win out of this, I would say. But Fletcher can put himself in a very good position. Here is the Pour. Now, unlike a fully powered Pour off 2 Lotus where you gain a mana, this is going to cost Fletcher 2, but that's still not a bad deal.
That is a good point. Yeah, I guess that's one thing that I missed. The Pour does not untap the Hope Tender. Okay, yeah. So we're only going to have 3 mana left over here. So like you said, likely not going to end the game this turn, but going to cycle through a bunch. Really, basically, this is just setting up for next turn at this point.
Yeah, and this Hope Tender is not exerted, so Fletcher will be ready to go.
And from Samantha's position, if we, I'm going to take a look at Samantha's deck to see if we're on main deck Brutal Cathar. I know some people had cut them. We do have Cathar, but with the Leer in play, now you actually have a really tough decision here as to whether you Cathar the Hope Tender or the Leer. My guess is you still really want to kill the Leer, but yeah, really tough spot for Samantha.
Yeah, this is bad news. And with the Leer, with the hidden string ciphered, it's actually something that Samantha would want to be blocking next turn if it's still on the board. It's also the only blocker. So I agree with you. If Samantha does have access to a removal spell, a removal creature, the Leer would probably be the choice. But this is looking scary. And maybe Fletcher's not even done yet.
I'm still going. Well, we played a land. We have green floating. Can get to. I'm trying to think of like a grazer line. So you can go Vizier, untap field, make 3 green. Now then you don't have blue floating. Yeah, okay, never mind. So we're gonna cycle Vizier to untap. I don't think I see a grazer anyways. Funny enough, we actually have Odawara available because we have Leer as a legend. So if Samantha has something like Brutal Cathar, Fletcher can just respond to the trigger and then bounce the Brutal Cathar to keep the Leer in play.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so no Brutal Cathar available.
I'm gonna guess that's an officer. The full tech strike, the full R card.
I was going to keep my mouth shut, but yeah, I think you're right.
It's got to be. I'm trying to look at the one drops. I don't think there's an Alt Art Hopeful Initiate, and I know what the Alt Art Skrelf looks like. So yeah, that's got to be an officer.
All right, there is the stage. So now the Hope Tender being able to untap 2 lands is probably going to exert here. Fletcher's like, you have some larger dice. I'm going to be floating a lot of mana here.
Any D70s?
Yeah. Maybe looking for an exert indicator.
We got Lotus Field. We're going to flashback the pour over the pages.
Yeah.
And Samantha's just on the F6 button. So
Yeah, and this one now with 2 Lotus in play, pour being flashback, Fletcher is very likely going to find a win here. This being all of turn 4 turns into the match. But
I was going to say it's got to be over at this point.
Yeah, there's no gas in the graveyard. There's no impulse. So Fletcher is going to be depending on what's in his hand. But it doesn't take much. 1 ultimatum, 1 dark petition, maybe even 1 pour with Leer in play would generate 6 more cards. So it's not asking too much. And there's a dark petition.
So then petition, which will go up to do we have? Wait, we don't. I don't think we have spell mastery.
Oh
right?
boy, that would be a real big problem. There's a Sylvan Scrying in the graveyard for sure.
That's all I see. I see Beseju, Pool, Stage, Vizier, Scrying.
This is an easy mistake to make. It does happen
Yeah.
frequently.
Unless we're missing something. Could be off camera.
It could be. There could be something else, or it could be something. I mean, that graveyard is kind of a just a mash of stuff. So there could be another spell in there.
Backup match anyway, so we this is
there's nothing we can do about it regardless. But
right. So let's keep going.
So that was petition for strings, untap, flashback petition, and now even if there's nothing in hand, Fletcher can get ultimatum, flashback to strings, and then
now it should
that's
be
all there is.
Mm-hmm. Yep, 3 black floating with the 2 fields. That's 9. Ultimatum, float 2. You don't even need the strings, but doing it for good measure. But yeah, basically the kill is once you get to ultimatum with 2 floating, that is, I believe, no matter what, a lock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot of, because the strings doesn't even open untap the 2 Lotus. It taps Lotus plus Hope Tender, which generates another 5.
Oh, right, because the strings can keep on tapping the tender, which is even more mana. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so here's ultimatum. So there are some, Samantha's going to pick it up here, which is understandable. As we get to the deck list, we'll take a look and see if there's any new cards that Fletcher has adopted. But we'll start with Samantha Waltz's Mono White Humans deck, which is down a game in a matchup that is, I would say, slightly favorable for the Humans deck. It's not overwhelming, but she has some new cards.
And something like Mono White Humans, like you mentioned, doesn't have it doesn't have as fast of a goldfish as some of the other decks. So, but as far as Samantha Sideboard, we got a couple of Redains. Definitely going to look towards those. Past that, I mean, you could maybe talk about Rest in Peace for Lear, but I'm not sure if I like that. Same with Destroy Evil for Omniscience. These are like really off corner case cards that I don't really know if you're supposed to bring in against Lotus Field, but
yeah, Rest in Peace is okay. It does shut off Spell Mastery also. So there are some uses. It's generally a card that it makes things harder, but by itself it's not enough. But when you combine, with some of the other cards, it being in your sideboard, I expect it to come in, but you can't like mulligan for it or anything.
Right, exactly.
All right, so let's go ahead and look at the other list. Fletcher Johnson. So the card I'm looking for here is Chandra, and it is there. So Fletcher
talk to me about that.
Playing the new kill condition for the Lotus Field deck. I've tried some with this myself. I'm not convinced, but I'll explain to you kind of the positives and negatives. So first of all, as the win condition, how it works is you just dome the opponent with Chandra, recur with Balaged, dome them again, and you just do that. And you can actually do it for infinite damage once you're completely set up. Okay. So that is how this version of the deck is winning. Now, Fletcher also has Mastermind's Acquisition. So there's also the potential win with approach in the sideboard. So this is a redundancy. Arguably, it's not necessary, but it's definitely safer. The drawbacks to Chandra as opposed to approach is that you have to utilize the graveyard. So with approach, if there's a rest in peace in play, the approach after the first cast never hits the graveyard, so it doesn't actually value up. Chandra does. So you actually can't win with rest in peace in play with Chandra. So that's kind of the plus and minus. Fletcher here with the full redundancy also has Lair of the Hydra. So the players out there with Bring to Light for Slaughter games looking for a free win, Fletcher is going to deny you that very much.
Yeah, Fletcher not short of win conditions this week. And as far as sideboarding is concerned, I don't think a ton comes in here because like you have the masterminds to get from the sideboard. I want to say the Zakambas do. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. So we can go ahead and roll game number 2 now. But so there's actually maybe not universal agreement on how to sideboard with Lotus, but there are a significant number of people who take out the ultimatums, the all the expensive stuff, and bring in sweepers and Zakamas and just win with the creatures. That is that is something that is done. It's not my preferred approach, but I'm not sure that I'm right in this case. But it does lead to things playing out slightly differently. Here we see the rest in peace on turn 2. So that's something. I mean, ideally Samantha would have a creature on, like, say, 1, 2, 3, and the rest in peace on 4. But getting in here, I mean, at least it's on there.
And not quite as good as Thalia here, but like you said, it does kind of hamper Fletcher's ability to combo off a little bit. Does shut off the Dark Petition, shuts off the Leer lines, and Wedding Announcement. That is an interesting one to bring in.
Okay, yeah. So Wedding Announcements certainly going to give Samantha some strength as the game goes long, and maybe draw 2 sideboard cards that she doesn't have in hand yet. But it's also, again, the clock is not as much as it could be with Rest in Peace into Wedding Announcements here.
Yeah, you could imagine, something like, say 1-drop into Coppercoat into Adelaide or something. There's a lot more pressure on the battlefield. So
yeah.
Fletcher's going to have a lot more time to set up here, given the, mostly anemic battlefield that Samantha has currently. Not like you said, still has to fight through the Rest in Peace, but we definitely have ways around that. It's Sylvan Scrying for Lotus Field, which I'm imagining is going to get cast here or played, excuse me. And we'll have to see what Samantha's follow-up is.
All right, it's Mina Vault and coming across for 5. All right. Bodyguard. So, okay, the attack's getting more impressive next turn. Wedding Announcements will pick up a card here.
Yeah, we got Fletcher on 11. So on the battlefield right now, we have 2, 4, 6, 7. So any Anthem effect is lethal, which would be Coppercoat Vanguard or Thalia's Lieutenant. Both of those would present a lethal attack next turn. And, we'll have to see if Fletcher maybe has one of the sweepers. Now, looking over Fletcher's list, I actually didn't see which sweepers we have. So we have a Sunfall, Languish, a Ritual of Sudden, a Path of Peril. Do most of those stay in the sideboard for Masterminds, or I'm assuming you board those in this matchup, right?
You do, yeah. You're going to board them in. So it's possible the Masterminds went out on the All Sweepers and Zakama plan. Yeah, it's possible. It's possible that the Masterminds went out. But either way, yeah, it's not something where, like, if you think you need a sweeper to survive, you're not going to have time to Masterminds for it. Samantha is in here, does have the Coppercoat, like you said, but Fletcher with a Hope Tender.
We're blocking with that thing.
Yeah.
My guess is you probably want to block the Mutavault here because it makes your sweeper better. I'm going to go with the Vanguard.
Certainly a reasonable point. Vanguard also, whatever it's protecting, as long as your sweeper isn't Sunfall, I guess, or Languish, would matter as well. One of the things about Sunfall in the sideboard, and I am playing it also, is that you do get around indestructible creatures, which is really nice, but Fletcher doesn't have enough. All right, and I'm being informed, so one of the perils of having matches on replay, that Game 3 was very long, and we're not going to have time for it, so apologize for that. Fletcher did win the match, so the Lotus player did take down Mono Humans in that one. And
so, Joe, now
yes.
that we have my deck 1 and your deck 1, now we have to play each other, right?
Well, we have to play each other, or we're going to pair up these players against each other. We'll see. Maybe they'll face each other in top 8, as I don't think Cliff is going to be looking to we have to get pared down. I think Fletcher already had the players we just watched. I believe already had a loss.
I think they did.
So, but yeah, all right. Well, if they do, that's how we're going to determine who's the better man. I don't think I like this competition. I think the Lotus side is in trouble. But if that's how it has to be, that's how it has to be. All right. We're having a good time here at NRG Gaming. Thanks for being here. We're going to step away probably, and we'll be back for round number 7 momentarily.